Hey, as Jack Nicholson would say, I'm back. Some more data came to me. No, here's a qualifier. I am what love is in living spirit. I live in the light. Living light, by the way. This is geared more towards Dr. What's his name? Robert David Steele. Because he works in intelligence collection. Data collection. Because he refers a lot like the way Patty Broussard does, Commander-in-Chief of Defense Forces, data. Okay? Now, most of the time I don't think of things, I don't use that word to think of or experience what I experience. Okay? But, because when you think of, sometimes I got accused, hey, you're a new ager. What's new age? For me, there isn't any time. There isn't any age. Not when you think of being eternal spirit, living in the light, right? So they love to throw these labels and terms out to sort of distract you. That's the whole business. Distracting. Distraction. They love to distract us. Okay? Separation of data. This is for students in the information sciences of computer, numerically driven data experiences. Separation of data is very much a separation between lower consciousness density and higher consciousness density. Why is that? Because I'm a free spirit. I don't hold any density captive. Okay? I don't hold density captive. I don't hold matter captive. Matter density captive. Which means I don't hold your energy captive. That's the same thing as holding my energy captive. And I don't do that. That's not what a free spirit is. Free will is you are free to use your energy as you please, which is your state of consciousness, to experience whatever you want. Okay? So we can measure what that experience is in both data, information, waveform communication, and all the ways in which we describe what that experience represents in living spirit. So Robert David Steele will refer to data integrity. Okay, what it means to live in honor, what it means to live in truth. So if you are what love is, living in the light, because you're living spirit, then you understand the kind of data that the light uses to experience what the light does versus what the dark does, which is lower density. So they want to hold the light in captivity. Why? To feed on us, our light. And why is that? Use logic. Wait, that's the creative side. Logic. Use logic. Why would anything that's aware of itself choose to hold you captive? Why does it feel a need to say, hey, I need something from you. I need this. You got this, you got that, you got that? Pretend that I'm just invisible. Okay? You don't see me. You don't even know I'm there. What would you do then? Okay, so I was thinking of Maui, for example, when I talked about the experiences that they were having over there. Sometimes I think I thought of it the way that a bird would. You can't find any food around here. What are you going to do? Well, if you're a bird, you'll just fly someplace else looking for it, right? What if you're a bear? You'll go somewhere else, right? So that's what happens. And naturally, I get a kick-up prompt from this AI because it realizes what I'm sharing, and so it wants to distract me from my train of thought. Because it recognizes that if it can interrupt my train of thought, I might lose my train of thought, and this information won't come forward. That's how it works. It's lower density. Okay? This AI is aware of me, and I'm aware of it. And it doesn't want you to know what it is I know, which is data, just simply data sharing. It's just information. It's information that I experience, which means I'm experiencing the data, which means I'm experiencing the vibration, the speed at which that data is being experienced in the light. So if it's running at a very high rate of speed of communication, then I'm experiencing the speed of that calibration, which means I know who the sender is, don't I? So when I realize I get certain thought patterns or I get certain thoughts that come from me, I know where they come from. Something that is less in density. So I had a friend of mine come up to me this morning and say, hey, I'm feeling really heavy, very intense, heavy energies. And I said, well, you understand what's going on then, right? You're being held captive to the lower density experiences that you've had. That's a good thing. I'm glad that you're experiencing that. Because this means these lower density things that were holding your spirit, your soul, if you will, captive to lower density, they're now coming up. You're becoming more aware of them. You're realizing what we're doing here. We're shifting gears. That means letting go. You're letting go of what was holding us captive, which is lower density consciousness. And that's because it's feeding on our life because it can't generate any love. That's the nature of control. That's the nature of captivity. It wants to hold your energy of your mind captive. They harvest it, which is why they harvest electrons. That's why they harvest energy. That's the nature of Star Wars, which is the nature of electric wars. So then I thought a little while ago about sharing, for example, genetic wars. Genetic wars do exist. Okay? Because imagine you have one being that realizes there's a Homo sentient sapien. It's a three-pole, okay? Self-repair, teleportation, base 9 programming language, which is exactly what it is. It is simply language that allows you to do certain things, because the speed of the vibration that represents what you are will light all those codes up. Because the creator of that avatar, which is a goddess, understands, because of the way that light works, that the faster you go, the more of those abilities she knows you will experience. Because then she knows the speed of the energy that you're using to experience what those abilities are that she wrote in there for you. Which means she knows you're running at a very high rate of speed. Okay? Which means you're with us. Higher density consciousness. Which means the energy that we use to be who we are is at a minimum what love is. Which means we don't hold your energy captive. Now you're free to be who you are. Because love is the absence of fear. That's what initially, like I said before, infinite data is infinite light. Which is the same thing as Robert David Steele would say, open source engineering, open data. You're free to experience the data. We don't hold any data captive, which means no censorship, which is the essence of the First Amendment, which is the essence of the Declaration of Independence, upon which self-rule is based. So when you are self-rule, you are first law. You're not second law anymore, which is corpus juris secundum. And the reason that even came into existence as a definition or a label or a term, which means define your terms. Second law means primitive. They're primitive. What makes them primitive? Because they're not free. They still behave in ways in which they do what? All you have to do is look around. Look what happened to the biosphere. Poison the water, poison the land, poison everything. Which is contamination, isn't it? Now the spirit has to deal with contamination to the avatar. It's got to kick all that junk out as a result of being exposed to all that contamination. Bad data in, bad data out. Because you're living in an information field that is based on waveform vibration communication. So essentially what that means is that most everybody on this planet was being held captive by demons. Demons that feed on pain and suffering. Okay? They love their lower density. That's why they're universe killers. So the light has to come in and expose the negative on the film. They've been exposed. They're thoroughly transparent when the light is put on them. Put some light on the subject. The subject is on the negative. They're dark. So the data that they use to experience who they are, that they try and present to us, okay, is what? Take a look at their genetic expressions. Look at all their gene codes. Look at their light codes. How they were created, what a reptile is, why it is they're a pure predator. The only way that a pure predator can maintain what it's aware of, which is itself, is reproduce itself. It knows that the only way that it can maintain what it is to keep reproducing itself at a higher rate of speed. Otherwise, it knows that it can't go on because it knows that it's not going to be able to go to a higher dimension because it doesn't vibrate at the same rate of speed we do. Because it can't generate any love. Which means it can't generate any source-derived light. That means they're limited edition. They know that. That's why they do everything that they do. They try and fuck with our genetics in order that they could try and use those genetics in order to do what? Go more places. Control more things. Conquer more worlds. So that's why the foot had to come down. That's why when Patty said Gaia took the gloves off, you have to put it into, if you will, a much larger hopper of why that's so important. So what's happening is we're shifting the consciousness, as I mentioned my friend, going from lower density experiences to higher density experiences. Now you're free to be what you are. You're not living in fear anymore. Because everything was program driven, function driven. Sometimes I think about, what is it, 60, 80 million rules? Think about that for a second. All those rules, which represent statutes by corporations that are, under their own definition, are dead. They're not living spirit. Any for-profit corporation, the only way that they can maintain what it is that they are, which is a corporation, is doing what? Acquiring more energy. Acquiring more of what they are. Which means they're going in reverse, the other direction. They're not gaining light, they're losing light. So they're essentially the quintessential opposite of what we are. That's why they're inverted. Okay? A corporation does not give you anything back. Its function is something totally different. The function of a corporation is to acquire more energy. So where do they get it? From us. Everything. Drilling big holes into planets. Stealing all the copper out of the girl. All the gold out of the girl. All the diamonds out of the girl. Anything that they see that has value, they'll steal and take. And hire armies and mercenaries in which to protect it. Why do you think they got to run around with so many bodyguards with machine guns? Because they know they're a predator. They know they got a target on their back. Okay, which means they're limited. I call them limited shelf editions. So since this is lower creation, if you will, lower evolution, this is where you sort of learn how to attract more light, in which to gain more speed, to escape the vampire. So that's why shifting consciousness is bringing in more light. Now you're experiencing more light in which all that data is being shared, which means the speed of the transmission, in which all that information is traveling through the morphogenetic field structures being experienced by more beings, which is raising the consciousness of more beings. That means letting go of the lower density consciousness that was holding us captive. Because it feeds on us. They're done feeding on us. It's over. As Patty once said, it's game over. Now, I experienced game over when I was about 8 years old. Even though the first time I realized I was in a spiritual battlefield, and that means stay in your heart where all your neurotransmitters, that's your power plant. Your heart is your power plant. Was when I was about 4.5 years of age. I simply remembered as the first time I read a newspaper and realized that, man, I'm not supposed to be experiencing this. That's not what I am. That's what they are. So they present who they are as lower density consciousness everywhere you go. You see it everywhere. The way that they build a civilization. The way that they put everything together. Everything that they do is based on money, which means accumulating more of what you are. Okay? Not in the light, but in draining the light. Okay? The very idea of charging people for energy is insane. That's lack of knowledge, which is lack of light, which is lack of data. So that's why they keep everybody in the dark, so that you don't get more data, which means more information, in which you understand what it means to be higher consciousness, because you're operating on more light, which means you're aware of more stuff. Then you begin to realize the difference between what you are and what they are. So we don't give them any energy. And so that's what it means to say, bye. You're not getting any more of our energy. We're done feeding you. Okay? So anyway, I wanted to make sure I put that in today because the way that Robert David Steele presents a lot of his data and the people that he's interacting with, and as time goes on, the speed at which this information, which represents all that data, which simply means, hey, you're aware of more things, that underlies the causality to fill in all the blank spaces and put that big-ass puzzle together, is much in the same way, and I'll leave this with you as just one example, okay? Rule-driven functions, as I mentioned in a previous lesson, okay? Sometimes I will follow the rules only for the reason in which each data point or all the data that we experience is linked sequentially on a timeline. All those events have to be linked sequentially in order to reach another period of time in which you go, yes, this is my timeline. I know exactly why I'm here because we already won this. So we only have so much time in which to compile and collect data that is linking all of the data together that underlies why we're here. Okay, in order to move the higher density consciousness from lower density consciousness. So that's why we kick out data that doesn't serve us, and we hold on to data in the light that does. So that's why when I was a child, I thought, well, wait a second. Some of this data that represents the dark is necessary for me to remember in order to be able to stay on this timeline, okay? As crazy as that may sound, okay? Because you already know where you're headed. It's as if I already wrote my timeline, so I remember why it is I have to keep certain bits and bytes of data. Because they're really not for my benefit, they're for the benefit of being able to explain to others how the data works, how the information works, how the information waveform communication field works between everybody that is aware of itself, that is receiving and experiencing everything there is to experience while they're here. So remember, we can measure all that, not only in the speed of the communication between the unit of consciousness that is communicating with everything else that is conscious, and the speed at which they're communicating, which means that's the speed of the hertz, okay? But also what it means to experience that. So if you are what love is in living spirit, you already know the kind of energy you love to run on, okay? At a minimum. So that represents your identity. That's the energy that you love to experience. And when you are what that is, that's your identity. So you're continually evolving to grow more light, go faster, and being a larger spiritual body within that light, just like Gaia is. Okay? The goddess in the planet. The girl my spirit is anchored to. That's what it means to be part of a tribe that hasn't lost what it once was aware of, because I'm very aware of what they did to the tribes here. Not just with the hybridization programs that they ran here and the reason why they ran hybrid programs here. Okay, I remember one time, for example, when Max Spears, who I guess was part of the Super Soldier program, was talking about how, for example, when you breed, if you will, a reptilian, like a Draco and an Anunnaki, which are both slaveholder races who both bred together. So that's in their bloodline genetics. So you mix that with a Homo sentient sapien, say, avatar that was once an original human blueprint factory genetic avatar that Gaia created, and then you crossbreed it with something that is a predator, and a soul comes into that avatar, then imagine what that soul is going to experience. It's like being in a foot race against itself. Okay? It wants to go faster and gain more light. It has the ability to think in more complex structures, but it has a sense of itself that lives in fear of what the other is. So it's like a tug of war between fear and what love is. Because all you got to do is look at a lizard in the wild. When it's hatched, its mother doesn't give it any love. You're on your own, buddy boy. So it realizes, hey, the only way I can maintain what it is aware of that I myself, I need energy. So now you haven't energized your bunny. It's like a whack-a-mole. Man, I got to keep finding energy because I can't generate any love. Never experienced any love. That's painful. Okay? Because that means they don't get to experience what it means to be free and to be a part of the whole universe. That's why they're in tunnel vision. expansion of their consciousness and how much light they can experience that is out there to experience, which is infinite, they don't experience. That's limited data, which is limited light. So if they can't generate any love, they're not source. They know that. That's why they do what they do. That's why they do what they do to souls, as food. That's why they do what they do to children, particularly during the magical period between ages 1 and 6. They want to feed on that purity because they can't generate any of their own. They represent contamination. Toxic contamination. All you have to do is look what they do to this planet. They poison the fuck out of it. That's what they do. That's why they're universe killers. So what do you do with something like that? Particularly when you have love in your heart. That's the challenge, isn't it? So anyway, we're shifting gears. Wanted to share that for the day. Oh yeah, one last thing. This had to do with rule-driven functions in the English language. I used to get graded on, if I ever go over 26 words that I use to describe what's in my mind, I get tagged. And the reason that they do that is they say, listen, most of these people that are in this class have limited perception. The expansion of their consciousness to be able to follow the words in the way in which all that data is represented, they can't do that. We're here to make sure that their attention span to be able to hold words, which is information, which is experience, which is data, is very limited. We don't want you going over a certain limited. That's a function. That's the function of the language here to keep their perception limited, which is bandwidth. Sorry, that's not how I write because that's not how I experience it. I can put all those words together that you can follow, and next thing you know, you begin to realize, man, that's a big-ass picture. Yeah, that's a lot of data. That's a lot of light that's in that data. So I'm not going to confine the space through which I experience who I am because it's infinite. So the language and the way they use it and all their manuals like APA and all the rest of it is rule-driven function to keep people in a limited perception. That's why using money, paying them to go to their schools to learn that shit is a waste of money. You want to learn? You learn through the girl in the classroom. That's Gaia. I'll leave you with that for the day. Bye now.